Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a fabulous Easter bank holiday weekend. I'm Kat Hollis and I'm here today and I'm going to do a Prism Craft Markers Masterclass for you. But before we get into that, let's take a look at our Win It Weekly competition. So for your chance to win this amazing Miri bundle, we have 100 sheets of our gold Miri and 100 sheets of our silver Miri that we are giving away to 2 lucky winners this week. All you have to do is answer this question and like and share your comment. What is the world's longest ever running musical performance? Is it A, 639 years, that one took me by surprise, B, 157 years, or C, 461 years? Are we ready? Let's get going to our masterclass. The first technique I'm going to show you today is how to make your own little blending chart to help you guide what colours you can make by blending your craft markers. So I've just cut myself a little square of our Ink Me cardstock. You do it out of the same material that you're going to be colouring on. And all I'm going to do is I'm taking a range of my yellow markers, the colours that I want to use for the stamp that I'm going to colour in shortly. And I've just arranged them in number order. So I've started with 402 and I'm going through to 517. And all I want to do is I'm going to take this piece of card and I've got a pen and a ruler. And I'm just going to mark off 2 little lines at the side and the bottom, just so down here I can mark my colour numbers. And then I'm just going to start with my largest shade and I'm going to take the chisel end and I'm just going to do a line across the top, turn it once and a line the other way. And then I'll take my pen and I'm just going to mark down what colour number that is. So 402 and the same the other way, 402. And then I'm just going to repeat this process with all the colours, and where they cross you will be able to see what your colour blends will be if you mix these 2 colours together. So we're now going with 405. Next is 406. And of course you can do this with different colours as well. I'm using all the same tone here of yellow, but you can do it. You can mix your blues and your purples and your pinks, whichever you're wanting to use on the project that you're working on. .410, and the last one I will do on this one is 411. And you can start to see where you get your crossovers here, you can see the different colours and how they blend together. So we'll just mark this last one, 411, and I'll bring in the green one that I've made earlier just so you can see when you pick them all colours up. So with this you can see at all these points where they cross, you can see all the different shades of the colour green that you can make, and you've now got a nice handy guide when you're doing that green work. Like I'm going to do a quick stamp demonstration shortly, just how you can build and blend your colours. So I'm going to use these 2 as my guides. I'll just put them to the side and I'll just bring in a little bit of Ink Me, and I'm just going to stamp myself from our rose stamp here. And to stamp this image, I'm using our Memento ink, which is what we recommend when you're colouring with your craft markers. It won't bleed, it'll stay nice and crisp. So we will pop our stamp down, making sure we've got room to stamp the flower head on top. And we can place this back in. And now, using our guide that we've created, we can start to colour this in. So I'm going to start with my stem and my leaves, and I'll bring in my green chart, and I can just use this as a guide. So I think I want a nice light stem base, so I'm going to look over in my top section here, and I want something around this kind of shade. So I'm going to go with a 419 as my base colour. I'm just going to do this all over the stem and the leaves. Now this is quite a fine area that you're colouring in, so I'm just touching the cardstock barely with the tip of my pen and letting the colour just flow in between the lines and then pushing it out around the image. I'm going to take that all the way around, and this is going to be our base. And just layering the 419 on top of each other, you'll start to get darker variations throughout. And there's the little leaves on the base of the rose head. So I know I want to start darkening this up, so I'm going to take the 242 and layer this over the top. And this will start giving us some more detail into those leaves. And if you just follow the details on the stamp, come up the line and then just little bits here and here, and then I'm just going to pick out the little shadows that are marked already in the stamp. And then if you're wanting to blend those colours back in a bit more, you can just go back in with your 419 and just help them bleed into each other. And just keep building up the colour until you're happy with the texture and the look that you want. Now I think I just want a little bit of a darker shadow into those bits, so I think I will go back to my 427, just right at the very base into my leaves, just to keep adding to that depth. And we're not going all the way up now, we're just doing tiny little dots of detail. And then we'll go back to our lightest colour and just help that keep blending in. Okay, so when you're happy with the depth and the definition that you've got on your leaves, we can move on to our flower. And for this one, I'm going to be doing a yellow rose. So I'm going to cover the entire base with my lightest colour, which is the 402. and you can just go in. I like to colour when I'm doing larger areas in a circle motion to get a nice even coverage. And even though it's only going to be the very, very tips of our petals that are going to remain this colour, I like to colour the whole thing because it gives us a much better blendable base at the bottom all the way through. So now I'm going to go in with the 405. And I'm going to work from the inside out, and I'm going to do the majority of the petals in this colour. I'm just going to leave a little bit of the lighter tip on the edge. And the closer I work to the outside, a little bit more of the white tip that I'm leaving. And then I go in with my next darkest shade, which is the 406. And we repeat the process, but each time we're taking the darker colour less further out. And as you work your way around, you'll see that your colours naturally start to blend into each other. But if you're wanting to give them a little bit of help, like we did on the stem, you can just go in with the lightest shade and just help blend them out a little bit more, which we will do once I've finished this. So I'm going to go back with the 402. And we're just going to start bleeding those two colours, the 406 and the 405, into each other just a little bit more. And if you're wanting a slightly darker edge, you can just go over where you've already put that 402. So I think we've got a bit of room to go in with one shade slightly darker. So we'll go in with our 408. And we'll concentrate on the middle of our flower. We really want to add some depth. We'll start working our way out. And we're just going into those very, very fine inner bits and where shadows will be created amongst the petals, just to really build up that depth. And then I'm going to take my final colour, my 411. And this might look a little bit strong again when we go in here, but like I said, we can always blend it out. And we're just using the tiniest touches around the edges. Just to really make those petals sing and come to life. And back with the 402. Just to blend out any little bits that are a little bit too harsh. And there we have it. Our lovely yellow rose. For our next demonstration, I'm going to finish off colouring a stamp from our Fairy Blossoms collection, showing you how to work on skin tone and just more of the blending up the colours on different parts of your larger stamped images. So as you can see, I've started and I've done some of the sky and a few of the little flower details, but you're going to see me get to colour all these colours again as we finish off this stamp. So let's sit back and relax and finish colouring in. So what I'll start with first is finishing in this blue section here, and this is simply my 462 marker. And I'm not doing anything over complicated with this. I'm not blending it with any other colours. I'm just lightly touching the card and filling in the space. So again, when you're coming into these finer points, just barely touch the card with the very tip of the pen and it will flood the paper and just go where you want it to go. This stamp has been stamped in the Black Momentum ink again and onto our white Ink Me cardstock. And I'm just taking my time to go around the fine details and trying not to lay the colour up too much onto itself because I want quite a solid background effect. And that just finishes that section off. So now I'm going to move on to the underside of the mushroom here, and I'm going to start with 402, our palest yellow creamy colour. And 9 times out of 10, when I'm building up colours like this, you'll see that I'll start with my lightest shade, work up with my darker accents, and then go back and blend with the lighter shade again. So we'll go all the way in there. Then I'm going to take a little bit of 543 and 542. Now, it would suggest that this is lighter and this is a lot darker, but they are slightly different tones. So I'm going to go with the 543 first. And this has got a little bit more of a pinky base. So I'm just going to bring that down just in the shadow of where the cap meets the gills. And a little bit down the sides here. And then back with 402 just to blend that back in. And you can see how that colour has bled into this one compared to this one, where it's still quite a harsh edge. So we're just going to work between the two shades, little circular motions, and bleed those two colours into each other. And then I'm going to take the 542, which is the dark end. This is more browny taupey grey colour. And we're just going to pick up some of the accents again on that gills. And don't worry if it looks a bit harsh and blocky when you first put it on. We'll go back with that 402 and just blend it down. And just work in small sections at a time. You can always go back and add a little bit more if you're not happy with the final result. But I just think we've added quite a lot of depth and definition under the bottom of the mushroom there. So let's go on and work on our top section here. And for this one, we are going to want our red shades. I'm going to start with the mushroom cap here, and I am going to start with a base of orange. Now we usually think of it as red, but I want to build that tonal and dimension up. So I'm going to start with the 527. And again, I'm just going to cover the whole of the mushroom base with this colour. And this is actually quite a good match for the cap. Now on the top of the mushroom here we have got lots of little white dots that you see on the top. I'm not going to worry about them too much because we can go over with the white gel pen at the end and add them back in. So if you find it easier just to colour over them rather than working your way around them all, especially when it comes to the blending, we can sort that out afterwards. So we just work our way across the base. There's a little gap. And all around the other side. And when you're happy you've got the coverage you want with that, we'll now go in with our next shade, and I have got the 528, and I am just going to start at the top, start bringing this darker colour down to just over halfway. We'll bring it a little bit further down on the edges just to help give that rounded effect. And before I go back and blend again, I'm going to go in with my 538. And this one's going to look quite dark, but it'll all start working. And again, this is the one that we're just going to take just a couple of millimeters down. Right down to create this curvature, make it more 3D and come to life. And then back to our lightest colour, and we're just going to blend these all into each other. And if you add this back on top, even on top of your darker shade, it's going to make it darker still, but just help blend them all in together beautifully. And I think with this one, when we go in with our white gel pen, once we've finished everything else off, it will really, really make it pop. But that's the top of our mushroom. So now let's work on some skin tone for our little fairy. So we have 3 shades that I usually work to for this. So I'm going to take my 550 and I'm just going to scribble myself a little colour swatches on the bottom so I know what I'm wanting to work with. So I've got my 537, my 550, and let's just see, no, that one's a little bit too dark. Yeah, it's my 515. So again, I'm going to start with the palest shade, which doesn't necessarily indicate in the shade numbers, but I know for this one it's 550. And we're just going to go over the arms. Making sure to remember there's lots of sneaky little bits of skin here that we just need to catch. So there's the top of her arm there and the top of this shoulder. So if you were wanting quite a pale effect fairy, you could leave it at this stage. You could just fully colour it in and then just go over some of the highlighted areas, like a little bit of a shadow on the forehead and the elbows and under the chin and the shoulders, just to add that little bit of extra definition. But for this one, I'm going for a slightly more tanned fairy. So I'm going to go in with my 515 and I'm going to do exactly what I've just showed you, but with a slightly darker shade. So we're going to be picking up some shadow on the forehead, around the cheeks, just a little bit under the eyes, and of course I'm going to go back and blend these back in. And come down around the outside of her arm, and a little bit on her elbows. Under the chin. And down the top of her arm. And then we'll go back to our 550 and we'll just start blending all these beautiful colours into each other. And hopefully you can see on there just how beautifully the blending in and just building up that warmth. Can you see? And then I'm going to take the 515 and I'm just going to do a little bit of circles just to give that little flushed look in her cheeks, just to make them pop a little bit. And then just blend them out just very softly around the edges with the 550. So I'm going to go on to her lips and I'm going to use this 557 just to give her a very soft pink lip. And then I'm going to take my 461 just to add a little bit of blue into her eyes. And why I've got this colour out, this is what I'm going to use to add some definition to the wings. Now we want the wings to stay looking quite iridescent like, so this is a really beautiful colour for giving that effect. I'm not colouring all the way, I'm just doing strokes to give that kind of like light glistening off them kind of effect. I'm going to build this up again, so I'm going to make it more dense where it's meeting her body. And then just push it out in lighter strokes towards the end. We'll come over to this side and do exactly the same. And there's many different kinds of colouring effects you can do on the wing. You can have them matching the fairy's tones, or you can do more like this kind of effect. But I am going to add a little bit more colour in here just to give that more tonal. So you've just got that very subtle effect there. So now I'm going to go back in with my, not that one. I want this soft pink colour, and I'm just going to lightly just touch this over a couple of them. And again, looks a little bit crazy when I first start, but once I go back and I blend it in, it just gives it more of that iridescent effect, like it's catching the colours in the light. And we'll just blend that down. You're just blending them into each other. And then if there's any little bits that you still think are a bit too harsh and you want to take any of that colour out, I'm just going to reach round, I'm going to grab my Colorless Blender. And effectively what the Colorless Blender does is it removes colour. So it helps you blend, but it will take away any harsh edges without adding any extra colour. And this one just really helps blend that pink in to the blue. And I am going to go back in here because I've fallen by my own mistake and realised that I've missed a little bit of my skin tone, a little bit of Aramia. So I'm just going to go back and add this in. But it doesn't take much. And we're all caught up. So now we're going to move on to her dress. And for this, I'm going to be using my pale purple shades. So I've got 484 and 559. So again, starting with the lighter shade. And I'm going to go all over the petal bottom of her dress. So it's all pretty much one solid shade, and then I'm going to start adding my definition with my 559. So I can add a little bit of darkness to the top bit, but I'm leaving a little bit of the lightness where I can blend down. So I'm going to take this in to the top and middle of the petals. And as you can see, it looks a little bit blobby, but this is where we start blending it all together, going back in with that lighter shade. And I'm going to grab my Colorless Blender again, just to make it even lighter at the bottom of the petals. So basically just dabbing it on, and it will remove a little bit of colour away for you. And we'll just fill in where her little knees are sticking it up over her boots. So now we're going to move on to her hair. So I'm going to take my palest yellow, the 402. And this is all over her hair as a base. Now the wonderful thing about fairies is that you can be really, really adventurous when you come to hair colours. But I think I'll try and keep it quite tame for this one. And take my 405. And I'm just sketching this in. I'm not solidly colouring, I'm just adding it in to start building up that definition and that texture in the hair. And then I'm going to take my 542 just to start to add some depth and darkness. And again, as you can see, I'm just making tiny little strokes just to add texture and not make the colour look completely solid. Do a little bit darker at the roots. And then back with my 402. So I'm just going to blend these three colours together, and then I'm going to go back with the darker shade just to add that texture back in. Okay, I'm happy with that now. So all I've got to do is finish off with colouring in the daisy at the top. So I'm going to start with the centre. So I'm going to start with 405. All the way over. And then I'm going to go 406. And I'm going to keep that just away from the edges slightly. And solid in the middle. And then I'm going to take some 527. And we're just going to use a tiny little bit of this in the centre. Because as you can see, that looks a little bit mad. This is where I'm going to go back to my 406 and start blending this out. And you can see how that starts blending into the other colours, just to give you that darker edge in the middle. And the more you go over, the more pronounced it will get. There we go. So that just gives us that much more 3D effect to the flower. So I'm just going to go and add a little bit of colour to my daisies. So just double check I've got my right shade. And this would be one of my top tips, is when you're using lots of colours like this, you can lose which one that you're actually wanting to use. So if you just have a little bit of spare paper and do a scribble before you commit your ink to your actual design. So I'm just going to add a little bit of pink at the base of all these petals. We're not fully colouring it in, it's just to add that little bit of texture. And then I'm going to go over with our neutral one. And again, I'm not colouring in the whole thing, I'm just adding some dimension. It just makes them look a little bit more alive. So go back with the Colorless Blender and just help these really bleed together. Just to add that lovely texture. And that's the main colouring basically finished. I'm just going to grab my white gel pen and do as I promised before and fill in these little spots on top of the mushroom. And as you can see, this really, really just makes it pop and come to life. And I think this actually gives a slightly better effect than if you were just to leave all these white. If you were that expert of a colourer and you could colour precisely all the way around them, I think this just adds that little bit of texture. So just work your way around till they're all filled in. And then we'll turn this into a card. So I am going to bring in my trimmer. And usually you would look where your line is and cut around, but because we've got that little bit of extra space around the ring, I'm just going to make sure that I allow for that when I'm trimming this out. So I'm just going to keep a nice white border edge around. I'm going to bring in a little piece of black ink in my card, and I'm just going to mark myself a matte and layer border. So I'm going to place this up into the top corner, and I can see two of the edges that I'm happy with the border with, and then I can mark the others and I can trim them. Add a little bit of construction glue to the back of our stamped image. And we'll pop that on there. So let's pop her up there. I'm going to grab myself a 7-inch card blank. So we've got a 7-inch card blank, and I'm just going to cut this down to 7 by 5 inches and keep this in a tent-fold position. And this should give us plenty of space for our fairy to sit on there. So just to finish this off, I'm going to pick out one of the main colours, and I think I will take this lovely purple just to pick up on the images from the fairy, and I'm going to use this on the chiselled end to create a faux border around the outside, which is another thing I absolutely love to do with my craft markers, because you're going to get a perfect match to the colours that are on your design. And this one appears to be running out a little bit, but that's only because I've used it so much. But we just go over it a couple of times just to build up that colour. And then we can pop her down at the top, and I am going to leave a gap at the bottom here for something else. So let's add in some construction glue. So we will pop her in that top portion there. And then I'm going to take some white ribbon. So I've got some white ribbon, And again, what I'm going to do, another great thing you can do with your markers is colour your own ribbon. So I am going to take the darker purple shade that I've used in this design, which is the 559, again using the chisel end. And again, just brush it across, building up the colour. And this again will just give you that perfect shade match to what you've already used in your design. And I'm just going to work my way along because I want enough to be able to wrap around my card, and then I'm going to add a little bow on top as well. So I'm going to keep going for a while yet. You can just see how beautifully it sinks into the white ribbon. And hopefully we'll have enough there now. So I'll measure myself a little section for the bottom of my card. So if we just open the card up, and we can add a little bit of double-sided tape. Just to secure this in place. And wrap that around the bottom, round to the other side. And secure that down, and then with the remaining bit, let's make ourselves a little bow. Of course you can use your bow maker for this. We'll just get it to the size that you want. We'll trim off our ends. Bit of construction glue, and of course make sure you give yourself a little bit of time for this to dry. Pop that in the centre, and there we have our finished fairy card using our craft markers. I hope you enjoyed that and learned something there. So before I go, let's get on with our TV schedule. Next up, we have Pauline. We'll be with you on Hobby Maker tomorrow at 1 p.m, 3 p.m, and 5 p.m. with our amazing Moonstone Iris folding dies. And then next up on HDTV, we have Rebecca and Natalie live at 10 a.m. tomorrow for the launch of our fabulous, highly anticipated Curious Cats collection. Bye!